If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief?
Hey, CEO Mischief Makers, MKJ here, Mary Kathryn Johnson. You can just call me MKJ. And I get to chat with someone I was introduced to from a very dear person to me, Laban Ditchburn, introduced me to Dorris. Chris, you ready to have a conversation today with me?
Most definitely, Mary. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, start off. I know who you are and what you do, but start off kind of letting people know who you are and what you do.
Well, I refer to myself as a mental toughness coach. And I think it could be helpful for me to define what mental toughness is. This is my definition, and I doubt that you'll find this anywhere. Mental toughness is a superpower. It's a human skill that's developed through diligent inner world work, training. Specifically, it's the ability to respond rapidly to all of life, not some of it, not most of it, but all of life with grace, mastery, creative genius, and enthusiasm so that we can get to the creation of excellence faster and with least effort. And I'll repeat that in a little more summarized way. Mental toughness is the ability that is earned through diligent inner world work that most of us have not had exposure to, ever. It's the ability to respond rapidly to all of life with grace, mastery, creative genius, and enthusiasm, so that we can get to the creation of excellence faster and with least effort. So that's what I do, is I help people train their brains.
How did you do that? What started you on this path? Bring me back to a time when you didn't have that mental toughness and had to, because most of us are accidental in what we do, in the sense that we typically have to do it for ourselves before we do it for someone else, whatever it is. So take me back to why you landed where you landed. What mindset shifts did you have to go through to get to where you are?
Well, when I'm growing up, my father died when he was very young, and I was 9, and we struggled. So our house was characterized by scarcity, a lot of fear, and a lot of unpleasantness. Now, in contrast, my neighbors, who were really close, really, really good friends with my dad's, there's the Canes. Their last name was Kane. Dan and Mame Kane, retired railroad workers from the Philadelphia Railroad. Kane was their last name. They had one child, a daughter. Guess what they named her?
Oh, no.
Candy.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
Well, at least they had a sense of humor.
And she was super sweet. So anyway, I love the Canes. I loved them. And they had such a beautiful vibe. My bedroom faced their house. So I'd be in my room in the evening reading Hardy Boys books or something, and then I would hear, they would always be on their back patio having cocktails and laughing so loud and so hard. You know how laughter is contagious. And I would find myself, I was catching their joy. I was literally catching their joy. And I didn't have clarity like I do now in hindsight, but I realized now that what was going on in me was I was observing a stark contrast between the vibe in my home and the vibe in theirs, and obviously theirs was a heck of a lot more appealing. And it was during those formative years where I didn't know it at the time, but it's so obvious to me now. I was so curious that why is it that some people choose such elevated states and some don't? And the elevated states are so much more appealing to me. So I studied psychology, and then I became a social worker, and then it evolved. Everything just evolved. I stayed on one path for my entire life. I stayed with the one thing, and it's taken on many different iterations, but that really is the origin.
Yeah. So what was the answer to that curiosity of why do some people choose joy and others don't? Because I hear you. I come from a family of 3 girls, difficult environment. I chose the path I chose to not take on the drama, to look for the positives, to look for a different way of doing things. And my 2 sisters did not. So why? What is that? What is the answer? If it can be encapsulated into a statement or into a 5-minute conversation.
I can put it into one word. I'll give you my response in one word: conditioning. But I'm going to need to explain that.
Yes.
So you can also make the argument that the work that I do, mental toughness training, mental mastery training, is about unlearning. It's freeing ourselves from the conditioning of our past so that we can experience reality as it is, as opposed to through the thick lenses of our conditioned past and living in the prisons of the conditioned mind. Like, for example, we all grow up and we learn that when you don't get what you want, that sucks. Like, that's just a rule.
Okay.
When you don't get what you want, that's bad. We've also all been conditioned to permit the outer world to govern the inner world, to let what happens in life really govern my inner state. So I like to use a lot of mantras. And one of them that I'm thinking of right now is the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. What I've got going on in my life is the direct result of what I've got going on in my mind. And if I haven't strengthened the way I use my mind, then I'm going to have chaos.
Yes.
So my answer to the questions, why do some people choose joy and others don't? I believe, I'm really convinced that it's because of the conditioning. We've been conditioned to shift away from experiencing life opportunistically and enthusiastically to experiencing life problematically. And if we don't do the work to get back, then we're going to stay there.
Or see more of it, more of the scarcity. Yeah. I hear you. I get it. So I'm sure that took a path. It wasn't just all of a sudden one day you realized all of this, right? So like an onion, I'm sure that analogy has been used. It peeled back little by little by little. Is that true? Or was there more of a defining moment for you when your mindset shifted to that?
There were a bunch of defining. Well, okay. So no, there's one thing I've always been. I love humans. I love people. I believe in people. And I love joy. I love celebration. And I also love badassery. I like peak performance. I love sports. I love sports. Sports has governed, has been a major influence in my life. And I was a long period of time where I was a sports psychologist. I was working exclusively with competitive athletes on performing well by strengthening the mind. And Mary, one of the coolest observations I've ever made of human beings is that we're at our best when we feel our best. So I became really fascinated in that. When I was doing social work, I was working with tough populations. That was my first job out of college, except for the quick job I had on a scallop boat. But we will have to talk about that another day. That was a mistake.
Oh,
great learnings, but whew, that was rough. But so I was working with homeless people and drug addicts and chronic schizophrenics on the streets in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And it was it was hard. Whew, that was tough stuff, tough work, people with a lot of suffering.
Damn.
Right? Great foundation for the rest of my life, vocationally speaking. But one of the observations that I made is these people that have nothing, when, for whatever reasons, the ones who chose, and it's a real operative word in our conversation here, the ones that chose to believe in themselves and in life, they seem to get the breaks, which I thought I was very fascinated with. I was very, very fascinated by that. It's the ones who put in some effort seem to get rewards.
What a concept.
So that was, yeah, right, yeah. Well, it's like the ones who chose not to be victim-y.
Yeah.
Even though they had every reason to.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So that was pivotal for me. But then there was serendipitous stuff. Like I was a basketball player all my life, and I played in college. And after work, I would go as a social worker at the Jersey Shore. I would go play pickup games at night. One night, I shattered my leg, really bad compound fracture, and I got an infection. I got a fatty embolism. I got pneumonia. I almost died from this infection. So it was a really serious, freak accident, right? Freak, and thank God for it. because, and I thank God for it, because it took that. Then I stopped playing hoops and I started playing golf. I got really, really, really into that game. And if you ever play golf, you know how mental it is. It's so incredibly psychological. And that's when I had another discovery, and that's obviously something that you just can't predict. I realized, wow, maybe my ticket, here's my next step, is I'm going to marry my passion for psychology and the human spirit and human potential with sports. My other most favorite thing. So then that was the next iteration. Started a sports psychology practice, and then working with all these golfers, and these golfers, some of them are amateurs and they're business people and they're sales teams, and it kept evolving. And I was a licensed therapist and a sports psychologist and a executive coach.
Spilled over into all other places. I mean, mindset does.
But there is a through line. The through line is the same. The backbone of this vocation remains the same, which is helping people experience life more beautifully, more powerfully.
Yep. Yes. And to be able to take that peace and that joy into other areas where they obviously are seeing they aren't feeling that way. Yes, I hear you. I had a similar, not a almost dying, but a funny situation when I was 8 months pregnant with my second son. I fell and broke both my legs.
Oh.
Had both legs in casts up to the knee, and couldn't take a shower, couldn't take a bath, could barely stand on one leg for any length of time. So I had a bedside commode. I didn't even know what one of those was. Didn't even know it existed. It made me sit. And sitting was not comfortable. And similar, serendipitous. This was the second pregnancy. The first pregnancy, I also went into early labor. I was in the hospital for a week to stop the labor. So there was my first opportunity to sit. I didn't take it. And so now this was the second one. It was basically like, okay, this isn't an option anymore. You will sit because you can't move hardly at all without the use of a walker. And you're going to sit. And I was the first and only time in my life I was depressed. Never before and never since have I been depressed. Just like all consuming of me, right? How terrible this is for me and all this. And it was my son, my older one, who was 3 years old at the time, wanted me to play cars because I always used to play cars and things with him on the floor. And he's like, "Mommy, come play cars." And I snapped at him. "What are you talking about? Look at me. How can I?" How could I? How dare you? And the look on his face snapped me right out. I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. You are not permanently disabled. Why are you acting like you are? Why are you embodying this disability? Rolled my belly, big, huge baby hotel over and got on my knees and got on the carpet and started playing and was amazing until I, of course, had to go to the bathroom again next, and I had to figure out how I was going to get off the floor to get to that bedside commode. But that's another story. I mean, looking back on that, it's so funny now, the things that I had to do and the way life was. But at the time in it, boy, it was like, you're going to stop and you're going to think about the hard-charging, go-getting, main breadwinner person that you are showing the world. And you're going to have to think. And that is what's allowed me to feel like if I can get through this with my sense of humor intact, I can do anything. And I started my first business 18 months later. So it's completely a shift. So take me through after you went to mental toughness with sports. You've, I think, ventured beyond mental toughness with sports. What was that next iteration, the next mindset shift after all the wonderful golfers that got your help?
So this is, there was a point where I was working with professional golfers. I was also working with junior golfers because I wanted to work with youth and, get them working on their minds to, so they can take these tools to help them play better golf, but out into life. And I did a junior golf clinic one day, and I noticed there were some familiar faces in the room. I said, "How many kids been to one of these before?" And a bunch of their hands went up. And I said, "So what did you guys take from the last ones?" Crickets.
Anything?
So I thought, well, that's not a good business model. And so afterwards, I went back to the drawing board. I went back to my office and started thinking, how can we improve the value here? And that was an important question. That question, actually, asking that question changed my life. Thank God for that. I came up with two ideas. One was I'm going to do less content and go deeper. And I've done that for the rest of my life. And that's a good idea. Less is more thing.
Yeah.
But the other idea that was absolutely life-altering was I'm going to invite a parent to join the kid for free. So maybe the parent will retain some of the stuff, be able to reinforce it. So the first time I did that, a bunch of parents came. And one of the guys, after the workshop, came up to me and said, man, you got to come do this. I run sales at a company over here in Tempe, Arizona called Insight, a huge company. And I said, yeah, I'm familiar with that company. They're on I-10, and they sponsor one of the college FBS bowls. It was a big deal. He says, yeah, well, I run sales there, and my sales team's struggling pretty hard. They could use, this is exactly what they need. And I said, all right. And we did that. It turned out to be a great gig. The guy, Dave Canham is his name. We've become great. He's like a brother to me now. This is over like 20 years ago, more than that even. And great golfer too. And he said, you know, we forged a relationship. And he said, listen, man, this is so important on so many levels, the work that you're bringing here, that it far transcends sales and business in general. Wherever I go, I'm bringing you with me, man. And he kept that pledge. So a couple decades later, he's moved on and up, and he's brought me into these companies and introduced me, and then it just grew like that. But I can really trace it back to Dave Kahneman, but the reason I even know Dave is because I thought, how can I increase my value? That was the question that I reflected upon, and that reflection was life-altering. How can I improve what I'm bringing? How can I make it better?
And
how can I serve more effectively?
That's it. But in that process, it wasn't, what I hear you saying is, it wasn't just what other program can I create or what other module can I add or anything like that in terms of value. You looked at the individual and said, I don't know whether this was conscious or unconscious, but there are other people in this individual's life that can also help me impact them if they come and hear what I'm saying, especially parents. Obviously, children are not isolated little islands. If they go home and there's no support of what you're trying to help them with, that's why you got the answer of crickets when you asked, what did you take from the last one? Because it's a whole, I mean, you know, you don't want to use the word holistic, but it is a whole unit. There are other people in all of our lives that if they are involved in this process of mindset shifts and mental toughness and all the things you've been talking about, then we have a support, we have a reminder, we have something beyond just our own heads where we can actually impact deeper and stronger. That's what I hear you saying. Was that conscious or unconscious?
I was very conscious about bringing, just like keeping it simple. I just wanted it to be more valuable. I felt like these kids, golf is a tough sport, and I've played a lot of sports in my life, but of all of the ones that I participated in, golf is more of a mirror for the soul. And golf is also a very neurotic culture. It's an amazing game, and it's got a strange culture. It's like the opposite of like surfing. You know, you ask golfers how to go, and there's pretty negative answers unless it was an unusually good scoring round, unless you're a little kid or an old person. Everybody in between gets miserable. But then you ask like a surfer after like a mediocre wave day, and like, oh, it's rad.
Doesn't matter.
It's epic. Yeah. So so there's enough negativity. The sport's hard, and kids are learning fast to be really negative, like smashing their, you know, when the ball doesn't go where they wanted it to go, they feel like I got to show the world that I'm pissed, that I'm better than that. It's just all this weird learning. So I just want to, you know, I want humans to not suffer, you know. And I was using, like in a divinely selfish way, using sport because I love it. But, I mean, think about it. Golf is such a privileged sport. So few people ever get to do that. And these kids are learning to ruin the experience this privilege, this amazing sport. We're outside in this, manicured grasslands, which scientists say is like the most soothing of environments, and they're acting like jackasses because they learned to. So the question was very conscious, is how can I help these kids play, Play, play better, and experience intrinsic reward and discover their excellence. Because if they're walking out of this workshop and they can't remember jack, well, that ain't going to get it done.
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit CEOmischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.